Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's installment of Lexbe's free weekly webinar series. My name is Angela Cardinelli. I will be your eDiscovery specialist and webinar host today, and we have a lot of great questions to get through today, so I am going to try to hustle through them, but still do not hesitate to send questions to me, just type and submit questions to me during the webinar. And if it's something that I can't get to because I'm still covering answers to the questions submitted by our registrants today, we will myself or one of my colleagues will email you directly after the webinar, and we can do a screen share or just talk by phone to discuss any of those questions that we couldn't cover today. I'm starting with one question that I think a lot of our newer clients maybe want to begin with, but may be hesitant to just put it out there, like, what does eDiscovery encapsulate? What does it mean? What is the distinction between the traditional discovery that we're used to and what we deal with now, and what is being called eDiscovery amongst all of these different vendors? What do you need to know? And this isn't something that I necessarily go over in our weekly webinars very often, but for any of my paralegal buddies out there who have attended my Paralegal Advantage webinar know that I have discussed this very concept many times. So I just wanted to start us off with the EDRM. So what are we looking at? That is the Electronic Discovery Reference Model. And you'll see at the bottom of my slide that we pulled this from the Duke Law website, and you can refer to this website that's down at the bottom of my slide for a lot of other great resources as you are trying to wrap your arms around eDiscovery if you're new to it, or you honestly just want to make sure that you're following best practice. And as this industry grows and develops, best practice does change a little bit. So that is a great reference for anyone out there that's interested. So I won't spend too much time on this, but you'll see that we're looking at the different phases of the general case. In any particular case, these steps could loop back on themselves, and I'll discuss that here in a second, but it always begins with the information governance. That is really applicable for in-house counsel, but it still affects those counsel who aren't necessarily going to be the very first ones that are contacted by the party. But if if you're well versed in how to organize and control this stage, even if you're not the very first defense and you're the second defense, you still can communicate with whoever that risk manager or in-house counsel is that contacts you to bring you into the case. And this means that you need to notify custodians that litigation is looming. Those litigation hold procedures become important at this. This is when it becomes important, I should say. You are getting your electronic household in order, so to speak, and you're doing that to mitigate risk and expense. So for any of you who get thrown into eDiscovery mid-case and you have felt the pain of the expense of having to go back and recreate the wheel with the data, if you've done a production outside of eDiscovery and then now you have to do it within a platform and you're trying to, figure out how to do damage control with what was produced, how was it produced, having to reproduce it. This step, if you have this in check, will make the rest of it go much more smoothly. So from the initial creation of the electronically stored information and through the end of the case, through its final disposition, it all can be more, like I said, just a smoother transition or process, really not transition, when you understand this first step of information governance. You're identifying the potential resources of ESI. You need to just determine in this next stage the scope of the data, where it lives. Is it going to be email, hard drive collection, integrated messaging from a personal device, from a work issue device. Understanding all of those sources is really important in these first two steps. Once you know where it's coming from, you've identified what the responsibilities are to those custodians in that first step. You've then identified the source. Then you need to ensure preservation. Knowing that you have put your custodians and clients on notice, giving them clear instructions will protect against inappropriate alteration of the data, like does it get archived? How often does it get archived? Will it be inadvertently destroyed in any part of that common practice, during the normal course of business? How do they handle their data? Do they have a backup system? Is it hard to access? Do they need to put a hold on their protocol during the collection and preservation stages? Collection being the next step, which is the gathering of the ESI. That can be done by a company like Lexbe or by almost any other eDiscovery vendor out there, certainly by forensic collection and investigation vendors. It can be done by you. It can be done by your client. Understanding the best practice for those two steps of preservation and collection gets you that farther down the road. And then the next step is when Lexbe comes in. Now, we may have been involved in the collection process or we may not have. But once the ESI has been collected, then that's basically the stage when an eDiscovery vendor gets involved, because we will then process it for you. Processing is converting the ESI in most cases to a form that is more suitable for your review and analysis process. You don't want to go and review everything in Outlook. That would make you crazy. It's hard to run searches. It's almost impossible then to preserve the work product that you have done. So you need to put it into a program like Lexbe so that it can get processed. You can have an image that can get redacted or based. You can use all of the features of an eDiscovery platform to tag your documents, to parse out the relevant and non-relevant, to then produce and all of those other features that are available to you. So the processing step takes all of that raw ESI and makes it something that you can now review and analyze. The review stage, the next step, everyone I think is probably familiar with. You're evaluating it for privilege, for relevance. Best practice says that at this stage you're also evaluating it for specific issues and documents that assist your argument, deflate your argument, something that you will be using along down the line for a deposition exhibit, if it's attached to a specific witness, if it's something that you will use as a supporting evidence to a motion. That all is done during that review stage. And then the analysis of the ESI, you're analyzing and evaluating it for content and context, which really kind of is what I was just discussing. But you're trying to identify the important players, the key topics, and then analyzing for patterns. I've done another webinar discussing timelining, and in these eDiscovery platforms, especially in Lexbe, you can timeline and look for the patterns that help you, the gaps that might hurt you, and then that enables you to go back out and find the data if it's out there, if it's possible, that you need to fill in those gaps. The next stage, and kind of not almost final, but final stage of the bulk of your work when you're dealing with ESI is producing. So you're delivering this to opposing counsel or opposing parties in the appropriate eDiscovery formatted production. Everyone, I think, is probably familiar with, or maybe not, but if you're not familiar with it, you, instead of giving a scanned PDF with Bates numbers on it, you are giving PDFs with the counterparts in text and sometimes native format for the documents that you've deemed responsive. You also provide load files that allow the opposing party's vendor to upload those documents and link them, and then overlay metadata. and metadata is very important in the eDiscovery conversation. So for anyone who is not familiar with the common metadata fields, Lexbe has a template, if you will, ESI order that you can download from our website or just shoot me an email and I'd be happy to email that to you. But it has a table of standard metadata fields, so you know what to ask for and you know what you may be expected to be producing. Last part of the EDRM of the whole phase of the eDiscovery, the traditional eDiscovery model, is presentation. So once the discovery stages have been once you've met all the discovery requirements, you will then need to display your ESI at a deposition, hearing, trial. You need to understand how to present your native and near native forms. All of this is eliciting further information to bolster or validate your existing facts, the positions or arguments that you're taking, and all of this is done to persuade that audience. So that is the EDRM model at its finest, and I will move on now to some of our other questions. But I think this is a good gateway into some of the other questions that we had for today. But I'm going to hop out of this and take us into the platform. So I have a few questions that are very similar in kind. What is the best practice to manage a case in Lexbe, and how best can you chart or plot your facts along a timeline? So with the concept of EDRM in mind that we just discussed, you bring your data in, you understand the processing steps, you then begin to build out your case management or workflow. Are you going to use custom tags? I highly recommend it. So as you're reviewing your data, you're also tagging documents that, like we discussed, are relevant in that analysis stage, identifying patterns and people and issues that you will want to call upon later. So without further ado, I will talk about our timelining feature. And in Lexbe, our timelining feature is called Facts and Issues. And for anyone that hasn't used our Facts and Issues feature before, I will first start by just showing you what a built-out Facts and Issues case will look like. And while actually in between subjects, I'm going to check and see if anyone has submitted a question. Nope. Okay. So the use of facts and issues, as well as case notes, and I did get a question about case notes too, those are two different features, but both work and benefit you in the same way. You can make notations on an individual document, and then that can be shared with any of your other review team. They can access it. It could also be private if you chose to keep that private. But after we talk about facts and issues, I'll show you the distinction between creating case notes and creating this facts and issues feature. So what we're looking at right now is a case that we've started in one of our demonstrations with facts developed and documents assigned to each of those facts. So the issue will be definitely the broader concept. I've seen it built out almost in response to the allegations of a complaint. Here we have a more general example of a case with, again, these larger issues, which you see here on the left in this tree. And within each issue, you can create facts, something that is going to prove or disprove that argument, yours or opposing counsel's. you link a document to each of those facts, and that becomes your evidence that you will use. An exhibit that you're going to use to depose opposing parties, witness, star witness, or expert. A piece of evidence that you're going to use as an exhibit to support your argument in a dispositive motion. Even a trial exhibit. If you begin this process at the beginning of your discovery phase, and as you go through your review, then you have this that's already been populated for you to assist with building your case and your trial theme, I should say, your trial outline. So again, Lexbe's timelining feature is called Facts and Issues, and you would find that under the Analysis tab and Facts and Issues. So you first create your issue, and you do that simply by clicking on Create New Issue, and it will populate up here in the left, in the yellow bar, and then you will manipulate the name. Once you have an issue or multiple issues, and it just does take a little bit of organization and thought ahead of going in and doing your review. But it's designed really to help you organize your documents, and you're kind of constructing this timeline, if you will, so that even, like as I said, in the early stage of the case, you can start supporting your claims or the theories of said case. So without further ado, I will give an example of creating a new fact, and then we'll go find a document and associate it to that fact. So I'm going to, and as you can view the facts within the individual issues that have been built out, or by clicking on the top up here, you can see all of them. You have the ability to search terms. Once this is built out and you have, maybe 50 different facts in here, you may want to quickly access any of them that mention capital. So you could do a keyword search here on capital. You can filter by filtering on different facts or all of the uncontested or contested facts. You can manipulate the field view. So just like you can in any other part of Lexbe, manipulate that field view with which of these fields and columns are under your view. You can change that here. You obviously can delete, but this is a great feature. You can export your facts and issues to a briefcase. You can export all of the information to a pivot table. You can also export this to a log that you can use outside of Lexbe in Excel as a reference for, again, a trial outline or a hearing notebook. So facts and issues become something that's a really great case management tool. So not all of these eDiscovery platforms like Lexbe are just for reviewing and producing. You have these features here available for you to really create this review strategy and great case management work within the platform itself. So we discussed creating a new issue. We'll create a fact here first. I'm just going to collapse some of these guys. Make sure that no one has any issues or questions. Okay. So I'm creating a fact, and I know that I'm personally going to assign this over to a financial matters section. So let's call our fact company embezzles funds. I don't have a start and end date yet because I am going to just create this and then during my review process start to populate this with documents. If there's metadata available with that document, it will start to build those dates out. If I know already what document I'm going to assign, then I can use that particular document's metadata to begin the start and end date. You can decide to assign a tag to it if it's contested and by whom, or if it potentially will be. If it is a material fact or not. This is where if I knew already the document that I had in mind to begin this particular fact, I would just paste the title. If I want to assign it to a custodian, we'll choose Mr. Lay. And then I need to assign this particular fact to an issue. I could assign it to more than one issue. Today I'm going to assign it to my financial matters issue, but it could technically or theoretically, be the embezzlement fact could be another fact associated with the issue of negligence. But you have a lot of options here to begin these facts. There is my fact. Now let's say we have gone through this step and created many facts under multiple issues in the case, and now we're going to start running some searches and reviewing. So this can be done only with the intent to identify documents to link to your facts, or this can be prepared and built out, and then you go through the natural review process after you have brought all of your data in. And this kind of goes back to answering the question of best practice, just generally what you do with Lexbe and how you make it a great case management tool to take you through to trial. You cull all of your data by running keyword terms and identifying the ones that are relevant. You may have a date range in play, so anything outside of this particular date range is not going to be relevant for review. And once you have winnowed that larger corpus of the database down to what needs to be reviewed, what you need to expend your time and resources on reviewing, you put that in a review set, and then you batch it out to multiple reviewers or even just one reviewer. And then as they are reviewing the documents for privilege, for responsiveness, for additional analysis, like identifying those key players and key documents, you're also going to say, if you find one of these key documents, why is it a key document? What is it going to do in the case? And do you want to assign it to one of those facts under facts and issues? So I have kind of sped us up to that stage where, for example, we would be reviewing a document in our placeholder. A placeholder, for anyone who isn't familiar with that, is a good example of understanding the processing phase. Some documents, especially those tricky Excel files, don't always give us a beautiful PDF image. So what I did just now, which I should have had ready to go already, I exposed that is placeholder field. So the one that I grab will not give us that placeholder so that we can look at the PDF. Here's our PDF. Under the Disk tab, you apply your coding. Is it responsive? Is it responsive and privileged? Is it confidential? Does it need a custom designation? Is it a hot doc? Are you going to use this key document coding, or are you going to use one of your custom codes down here? So once you start to create those custom doc fields, those are your custom tags. Is it a great example of a witness identification, or is it going to be a document type that you're looking for all of the RFIs in a particular case? You can go in and code those as you're coding for responsive and relevance, and then later on, if you need to see all the RFIs from this particular month, then you can easily filter to those. I'll talk about case notes in just a sec, but that's where this would live if we were applying notes to a document. But here is the facts and issues section. So on the doc viewer, when you're in a document, You can assign it from here by selecting a fact. I see now a date, so I could start through January 31st of 2001 to, it looks like there's not an end date, so I may say to the end of 2002, but you get the idea. You can populate that there. All of those same options that we were given when we created the fact in the facts and issues feature are still available to you, because of course you may not know until you're looking at these documents, but you go through all of these steps and then you would save that document because you applied coding, you added it to facts and issues, and now if you were in a review set, you would be taken on to that next document. This particular document has notes already. So let's say we want to add a new note, and this gives you a nice idea of what it looks like. You simply add the new note by clicking on Add New. You give it a title, you put a note in there, you decide if it's shared or private, and then you save that as well. And I'm kind of speeding up a little bit because we're running up against the end of our webinar. I wanted to show one last thing about case notes. After you go through this process and you know that multiple reviewers have made notations on cases, you have two ways to access those documents that have been given case notes. Under the Analysis tab, a little bit down below Facts and Issues, you can access case notes for all documents that have received annotations by simply clicking there. And this is great because you can hover on the little pad and see what the note is just kind of at a glance. You can export this. So you can select all and export to Excel and see what the document names are, who created them, the time, has it been checked as a key document, has it been shared, is it private, and then again what the notes are. So from almost any page in the platform, you can export a log. So there was another question about creating tables. You can manipulate the field view and the documents that are presented in front of you by doing something like accessing case notes. You could do it by going to your facts and issues section, or in search or browse, you could simply have run searches or identify documents by running filters. From there, you can export any of that information to a log in Excel, and that can be a jumping off point for any appendix or table that you need to attach to something that you're submitting. I'll check one last time and see if anyone has submitted questions. How Lexbe handles families of documents in an email chain. So if you upload, and I'll answer this in two parts just to make sure that I have a good answer for you. But if you upload native data, the email will, see if I can find one quick for us. The email will extract. So if you upload 10 emails in a PST file, you may get 25 documents in that upload batch because those 10 emails had family members. They had attachments in them. So in Lexbe, you will see the attachment as a standalone file. However, it is linked under the Related tab. If you code it, there are certain codes that propagate across the email family. So there's a consideration there, because within Lexbe, the family will always be maintained. You can't break up the family per se. In a production, the attachments will follow the parent. So a production will force the family in order. The other feature in Lexbe that will force the families in order is the review set. So as we're looking at this browse total of 2,423 documents up here, they're not in family order, they're in alphanumeric order. And you can sort in various ways to try to get close to that specific family order, but the only two features that will find the related documents and force them together in sequence is looking at the documents in a review set. So that's why that's always suggested for best practice for reviewing, is to add documents that need to be reviewed into a review set in Lexbe, and then in a production, so that when you produce, of course, the email and the attachments get based in sequence. So let's just find one so I can show you. Under the related tab, if this had an attachment, it would show me the relationship. So I'll just pull up one more trick to see if I can get it quick before we need to wrap up today. Okay, so I know that this is an attachment to an email family because I have my attachment field exposed. And even though we're seeing the placeholder, we could view it under the original tab. We could be viewing it under the HTML tab, because that's one great way to deal with Excel files that do have placeholders, is to review under the HTML, which is the extracted text from the native. But over to here to the related tab, now you'll see the family. So there is the parent email, and you can click into it and see the parent while, it will pop out in this tab. But that is not best workflow practice. If you want to, again, review a set of data, you want to put it in a review set so that you force the families in order for your review. Now, the last thing I'll say is, when you receive a production from opposing counsel, if they do not provide you with a metadata in the form of a DAT file, there are a few other file types that can be used to overlay metadata. You may not get the family connection. So they're giving you a bunch of documents that have been based. So we upload those based, images, either the TIFF or PDF files, but we can't connect them to their family members under that related tab if we don't have that information provided in their DAT file. So every once in a while, you may be told, once the processing is completed, that your DAT file is lacking, and so that may be a conversation that you would have with opposing counsel then. Okay, I think that I have successfully answered, I hope, all the questions that were submitted today. If I haven't, please feel free to reach out to me. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. There was one last question about the whole workflow process and then all the way through to trial. For anyone that's not aware of this, Trial Director, the latest version of Trial Director, Lexbe can export essentially in a briefcase the files that you want to use for trial exhibits, and can be imported into Trial Director. And again, I can't remember the name, but it's the latest version of that. So you truly could, with the facts and issues feature, plot everything out with your custom tags, tag the documents that you want to use, find those uncontested documents, or find the documents that are related to those uncontested facts, and then those could become your trial exhibits simply by exporting them out and then importing them into Trial Director. Thank you all for joining me today. I invite you to continue to register for our weekly webinars. It's great when we have questions that we can answer for you, and if it's something that you may know that you're running a production next week and you really want a focused discussion on how to set a production up and how to QC it, things like that are great. So please don't hesitate to join us for future webinars, and I hope everyone has a great day.